the political world just went through a serious shake-up, and a lot of people are trying to figure out what it all means. Mamdani is now officially the mayor of New York City, and depending on who you ask, today either feels like a celebration or a warning sign. Some Democrats are acting like they're on top of the world. Virginia flipped blue again. New Jersey has a Democrat in the governor's office. Prop 50 passed in California, and now New York City has taken a giant blue swing with Mamdani's win. Meanwhile, the news cycle is wild. A UPS plane full of fuel crashed on takeoff and left a mile-long fire trail. Tommy Robinson was acquitted of terrorism charges in the UK. The US government shutdown is now the longest in history. TSA workers in Houston walked off the job, and brain-computer interfaces are starting to look like something straight out of science fiction. The world feels like it's about to tilt into a whole new era. So yeah, we need to talk about it. When I first heard that Mamdani took the W in New York, the reaction surprised me. I'm not someone who normally leads with emotions. I'm more focused on outcomes, goals, and cause and effect. But this time I felt something, and it wasn't good. It felt like a heaviness, a sadness about where the country is headed, not because one person won, but because of what that win symbolizes. To me, Mamdani's victory isn't just a quirky local election, it's a signal of a much larger cultural and economic shift, and it's a shift that worries me. The reason is pretty simple. I think he represents a political mindset that correctly identifies the problems but chooses answers that actually make those problems worse. It's like when Steve Jobs was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer and decided to fight it with fruit juice and alternative diets, even though that kind of cancer feeds on the very thing he was consuming. When you misunderstand cause and effect, you can accidentally make decisions that speed up the disaster you're trying to avoid. And that's what I think we're about to see. The ironic part is that the outcomes he says he wants, helping the poor, shrinking inequality, improving the city, I want those things too. A lot of us do. The disagreement isn't about goals, it's about mechanics, it's about the physics of economics. And from where I'm sitting, Mamdani only makes sense if you view him not as someone who wants to lift up the poor, but as someone who deeply despises the wealthy. Because if you look at the track record of the policies he supports, they don't lift anybody. They just punish the rich in the short term while slowly crushing the poor and middle class in the long term. That's not ideology, that's math. That's incentives, that's unintended consequences 20 years later. And I'll be real with writing about this stuff every week has forced me to understand the economy in a deeper way than I ever expected. When you dig into markets, inflation, monetary policy, regulation, and historical cycles, you start to see how interconnected everything is. The more you learn, the more you realize how much there still is to learn. The shore of your ignorance grows with the island of your knowledge. But nothing I've learned so far has made me think I was fundamentally wrong about how these policies play out. If anything, it's made things clearer. The biggest tragedy is that we're abandoning the one thing that actually matters, a thriving middle class. That's the backbone of a stable society. That's the engine of growth, innovation, and shared prosperity. Without it, everything collapses inward. And instead of rebuilding the middle class, we're doubling down on policies that destroy it. The more the government meddles in markets, props up failing systems, or pours money into artificial growth through inflation, the more the gap widens. Inflation is basically quiet theft. It raises asset prices, which helps the rich who already own assets, while the poor fall further behind. Only a tiny fraction of Americans own most of the assets. So when inflation hits, 1% wins and everyone else loses. That's the environment where someone like Mamdani becomes appealing. Because he makes people feel like someone is finally punishing the people at the top. He makes people feel like fairness is coming, but feelings aren't outcomes. A policy can feel morally satisfying while being practically devastating. But here's the thing, New York chose this. Being just like a stubborn teenager who refuses to listen to their parents, the city wants to learn this lesson firsthand. So what do we do now that the dust has settled? We can't just throw our hands up and say, good luck, figure it out. We have to ask, is there any way to soften the blow? Is there any way to prevent the rest of the country from getting dragged into the consequences? The truth is, only a little. The biggest buffer we have is the structure of New York's government. The mayor doesn't have unlimited power. Some of the things he promised simply aren't within his authority. Some will get blocked, slowed down, or buried in committees. Gridlock is part of the design. A single person can't destroy a city. The real damage usually comes from systems and policies that accumulate over time. For example, rent control in the 70s and 80s absolutely devastated the Bronx. It was so bad that entire neighborhoods literally burned. Landlords abandoned buildings because they couldn't afford to maintain them. Crime exploded, communities collapsed, and eventually, you know how New York clawed its way back. Deregulation and pro-market reforms. The same capitalism that gets blamed for everything was the tool that rebuilt the city. So yes, we've seen this movie before, and we know how it ends. Can New York avoid suffering? Honestly, no. Cities don't learn from lectures, they learn from consequences. I didn't want to have kids because I knew I'd have a hard time letting them fail, even though failure is how you grow. My own parents couldn't help me after I graduated. I had to learn the hard way what it looks like to juggle bills, to get final notices, to choose which utility gets paid this month and which waits until next month. That pain shaped me. New York is about to go through a version of that. Crime will go up. Public services that become free will drop in quality. Bureaucracy will get bigger. Businesses will flee. Wealth will relocate. And the officials in charge will insist that everything bad is happening because of something external, never because of their policies. Eventually, people will get tired of it. They'll get tired of dirtier streets, more violence, more dysfunction. That's when they'll hold their noses and vote for someone who promises law and order. And law and order candidates tend to be more right-leaning. Those candidates tend to prioritize sovereignty, less government interference, and more economic realism. And then the cycle resets. The best thing we can do now is pay attention, plant flags, call predictions in advance. Not because we expect people to listen, but because over time you build credibility. You also refine your own thinking. If I say crime is going to rise, services will decline, and the city will get more dangerous, and those things happen, then we know the model is correct. If they don't happen, then I need to adjust my thinking. But here's where I want to pull us out of pessimism for a moment. Not everything is doom. There are places like Richmond during the pandemic that experimented with things like free public buses and ended up improving mobility without tanking their budget. There are small-scale policies that can work when they're designed around actual incentives instead of vibes. There are opportunities to learn from what goes well and what goes horribly wrong. New York has made its choice. Now we observe, we analyze, and we get ready for the next chapter. The world is getting very weird very quickly, and understanding these shifts is the only way to navigate what's coming.